Welcome to the Forward Together webinar series, brought to you by the School of Management at California Lutheran University. The series is designed to bring interesting topics and people to our global community of students, alumni, and leaders in business and government to empower, educate, and inspire. Forward Together features experts from industry with the purpose to spark thought, connect people, and stimulate engaging discussions. Please submit your questions in the chat. We will hold a Q&A immediately following the presentation.
A very good day from California Lutheran University School of Management. My name is Gerhard Apfelthaler. I am the Dean of the school. Welcome to everybody on today's webinar. I appreciate you giving us your lunch hour if you are in the same time zone as we are, or if you are in other parts of the country or the world. Thank you for making time for us in your early mornings or late evenings. For those of you who have been part of the Forward Together webinar series, it usually comes in one of two formats. We either have a speaker who delivers a presentation, or sometimes we do interview style. And today we're doing interview style, and we have a fantastic guest today, John Maier, CEO of Bose Professional, and not just a captain of industry, but also, I can proudly say, an alumnus of our executive MBA program. Welcome, John.
Hey guys, apologies. We got kicked off of audio and video for some reason. So I'm going to go from my laptop.
That is fine, John. Thanks for being with us. I understand you are at Bose Professional in Boston today. Is that correct?
I am. And we're still on the Bose campus and using Bose facilities. We moved to our new headquarters shortly, so we're kind of in disarray here. So apologies for the glitches.
That is okay. That's not the most important part of today. So our webinar today is titled From Chords to Chords. I bet a number of our listeners today have actually figured it out, but others might not have. What's the story here?
Well, yeah, it's I have to give you credit for the title because it wasn't my doing, but essentially it's the idea that I got into this business because of a passion and a love for music, to the point where I, like a lot of people, was a young kid trying to be a rock star, but what really intrigued me was the gear. How do they actually come up with the ideas for these products, go and build them, market them, sell them, and how to innovate around all that. And that just got me super excited. So to sort of make ends meet as a musician, I was working at music stores, doing some recording, doing some, audio installation at schools and churches. And that just kind of grew into the next thing, which, ultimately was, I want to work for the manufacturer. I want to see where the magic happens. And really led to the career that I have today. And then along the way, decided to go back and get my degree, which I did with you guys at Cal Lutheran for both undergrad and grad. So, but yeah, that's from the sort of musical chords to the cables that you're plugging in, the chords to your gear. That's really the connection that we're trying to make here.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I understand it was a little more than just a dream for you to become a rock star, right? You actually had a go at it for a while.
Yeah, for a little bit. Yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I made my living playing music for a short time. And I actually did a little bit of touring around the States mostly. And I still play to this day. I love it. It's still a big part of my life. So luckily, I'm in a business where there's a passion around the business, and a lot of people are like me, people who got into it because of the love for music. So we get opportunities to play together, which is great.
Yeah. So you still play every once in a while, a little jam session here and there?
Yeah, not as much as I'd like, but yeah, we still get to do it.
Wonderful. So you outlined that journey from musical chords to hardware for us a little bit. Tell us a bit more about the major stations in your career.
Yeah, so when I was in the musician phase, I spent sort of three chunks. Chunk one was in retail, so working with customers, working with manufacturers, and kind of getting an understanding for how business works and how trade works and the laws and issues around that. And then chunk two was as a salesperson, a representative in the field. So kind of a go-between between the retailers and the manufacturers. So that idea of, having the knowledge, being the customer, I mean, that was kind of really what resonated with me, as I was the customer. So I could really speak, empathetically to all of the parts of the channel as to what the customer's asking for. And then the third chunk was, moving to Los Angeles and starting to work on the manufacturing side. And that first started with a company called Alesis, that some people may know. And then from there, I worked for a Danish company called TC Electronic. And that was a company that did, power amps and speakers and several brands that people might know, like Tannoy, which is a very famous brand in the UK. And then eventually that led to Blue Microphones. And when I came on at Blue Microphones, essentially it was a pro company. 90% of the business was to professionals and recording studios. And we recognized early on this idea of, content creators, podcasters, YouTubers, and we saw them using our product. I have to give credit to our users, because they were calling us saying, "Hey, I'm using this for, this gaming system, or for this content creation." But we ran with it and eventually became the number one mic used for that approach to content creation, and really became a consumer brand instead of a pro brand. 90% of our business when I left was consumer business, done through Best Buy, Amazon, that kind of thing. And then I moved from there to private equity, because Blue had been owned by two different private equity firms. And I thought, I think I can help them run their businesses, because I'm a guy from the street. I'm a guy that's run businesses, and did that for many years before the Bose opportunity came up.
Yeah. Well, fascinating. I want to come back to your experience at Blue and taking it into the consumer sector. But first, I want to focus a little bit more on your career steps also. Was there a deliberate plan for you to, one day end up as the CEO of a major brand? Was it opportunity? What triggered and inspired the change at each step of your career?
It's such a great question, because I'm not one of those people that wrote down my goals when I was 18 and updated them every year, and I admire people that are that disciplined. But it's very clear as I look back that I was very ambitious and aggressive, and I did very much have goals. And once I got into the business side of music, I was very passionate that I wanted to be at the heart of the strategy and at the heart of a global business, driving the product and the relationship with the customer. And I just knew that from the beginning. And so that's really what led to each decision. For me, going to Alesis they were cutting edge, innovative business, and they were creating some amazing product. In fact, Marcus Ryle and Susan Wolf were part of that whole thing, because their company developed a product called the ADAT, which revolutionized the recording business, and I wanted to be a part of that. And then from there, TC gave me an opportunity to not just be a member of the team, but to be driving the team. So that step was, I'm going to be the CEO of the Americas for this business. I won't be at the heart of the global strategy yet, but I will be driving exactly what we're going to be doing in the Americas for that business. And then when Blue came, that was my chance. I could help them very quickly with the low-hanging fruit on things like the pro business. They could expose me to consumer side, China sourcing, a more global business. And I could be at the heart of it. I was never going to be Danish, and I was never going to live in Denmark. So I was never going to be at the heart of the strategy for that Danish company. But for Blue, I could be, and that's really where I sunk my teeth in. And I stayed at Blue longer than any other gig. I was there for I think 11 or 12 years, and just absolute blast. And probably the thing I'm most proud of there is the team that we built. So that's kind of how those decisions were made. And then with Transom, the private equity firm, I basically just thought, how cool would it be if I could dive into multiple businesses and help them, with the issues that I've learned, the things that I've had to go through with small, fast-growing businesses. Um, and did that for about 3.5 years. And I did miss the pro audio business. I missed the music business. And I missed that I couldn't dive deep. I was sort of very narrow, very shallow across multiple businesses rather than really sinking my teeth into one business and being able to grow it and build a brand and build a team. Um, and so when the Bose opportunity came up, I jumped at the chance to dive back in.
Yeah, fascinating. I want to make sure that our audience knows that we'll be speaking for another 15, 20 minutes or so, and then we'll get to the questions. Please submit your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll get to them in a short while. So from a bird's eye view, your career looks pretty linear and planned out. Reminds me of the great Henry Mintzberg, famous management professor, who said, in hindsight, everything looks like a strategy, but the reality is we're just muddling through.
Uh-huh.
So in each step that you took, was that a challenge? What was hard about the change from one role to another, from one company to another?
Yeah. For the most part, it felt fairly natural because it was a progression. Each thing kind of led to the next thing. There was one period that was much more challenging, and that's when Alesis actually went bankrupt. So when I joined the company, it was kind of in that space of just about ready to make a turn and become super successful again or go out of business. And unfortunately, after 2 years of me being there, it didn't work out. I stuck around for a bit, but when it came out of bankruptcy, they pretty much let everybody but a few engineers go. And that was a tough one because I knew I had opportunities. I knew I would be fine, but it was, it's almost too many things to think about, too many options. And I took a little detour there. I actually went to work for Guitar Center Management as one of 5 buyers there for a couple of years. And while I didn't love the sort of, Groundhog's Day approach to the job, it wasn't as strategic as I like. It tends to be more tactical. I loved the company. I loved the people, had a blast, met a lot of great people. But it was really just a stopover until I could get back into the manufacturing thing, which I did with TC. So that was a challenge because I walked into that job and I just really didn't know what I was doing. And so I had to wing it a little bit and sort of fake it till you make it. And then I got a lot of support from friends in the industry and some friends at Guitar Center to kind of help me get my arms around what a big buying position at a big box retailer is like. And what a great learning experience. It was amazing. So
Yeah, yeah. So, you've been a musician very early on. You've been an employee. You've been almost an entrepreneur, I want to say, in some of your roles with early stage companies. You've been a CEO, a board member. You've been in private equity. Is there a common skill set that you would say that you have that helped you succeed in all of those roles?
uh it sounds a bit cliche and we hear it a lot, but it really comes down to communication, listening, um, being able to find those places where you have something to offer and offering it, but not trying to, you know, sort of offer everything all the time, all at once. Um, I think, like I said, one of the things I look back at my career and I think that I'm most proud of, and that we've been able to do really well at is build great teams. And Bose Professional is no exception. Um, and I think, that the passion I have for this industry and the excitement I have around the products, it can be infectious if I'm doing it well and doing it right, and it brings more people into the fold, and then we all together have a lot of fun in building something. And so that sort of empathy, communication, listening, those things are, I can't say enough about them. I've seen other management styles um, that can be effective, but they just don't work for me or my personality. I'm not I'm not a ball buster or that kind of, just like in your face kind of. I'm more calm in the storm approach.
Mhm.
And I think if you you accept who you are and build on that and build on your strengths, minimize your weaknesses, you can do a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I want to come back now a little bit to some of the experiences. You already alluded to one experience with the company slipping into bankruptcy, which is a great example for great tech not always being the only thing that matters, right? You also have to have a market, and you have to have solutions, and not just or so not having solutions for problems that don't exist sometimes. Um, and then your experience at Blue, also taking them from a company that caters to a professional customer to a consumer company. Um, what was what's your relationship to technology? What's your relationship to spotting trends in the market? Obviously, you were very successful at Blue at seeing a trend that others hadn't seen yet at that time. Uh, what made you the person to do that?
Well, I think I'll quickly go back to team, because it wasn't just me, it was the team that I built that really got us to recognize that. In fact, our head of PR came to me and said, "I'm getting a lot of gaming people contacting me. Why is that happening?" And we started to look into it. But um, but I think it's because of focusing on the end customer. Um, it's something we're pushing very hard at Bose Professional right now, is a more outside in approach. Bose has a history of being about, Dr. Bose and research, MIT connections, and being really engineering focused, which is great. And there's lots of pluses to that. I come at it from an outside in approach, being the customer that I was, and then being part of the sort of channel that serves that customer. I'm just really conscious of talking to the customer, listening to the customer, looking at the trends that are happening with customers and users, and then bringing those back into the company and figuring out, what should we be doing. It's real easy to get around a table and start, riffing on cool ideas and getting emotionally attached to those ideas and just trying to go push them into the market. You might get lucky occasionally, but if you're not paying attention to what your customers are actually asking for, you're going to have a hard time. And that's what we did. The other thing that I will apply to the Blue thing is our competitors, our professional microphone competitors, and by their own admission now, looked at that whole content creator market as, that's not us, that's consumer, that's toys, that's not real audio. And they all kind of snubbed it. And I mean, to a single one, it's sort of an oligopoly with microphones. There's about 5 or 6 that own the mic business around the world. And they're all now going after it very hard. Shure is a good example. They've got a great line of products now for the content creator. Rode is another one that has done a great job in more recent years. Even Sennheiser, who said they would never touch it, they're now making USB microphones. So I think it was listening to the customer, but also being willing to change our brand and change the brand image and what people think of it with the brand. Our competitors weren't willing to do it at the time, and it opened a window for us.
Mhm, mhm. Another thing that you did, particularly at Blue, was you took the company global. Was that something that was entirely new for you, and what was challenging about it?
Yeah, yes and no. So because I had worked for the Danish company, I had a pretty good sense of some of the challenges of a global business, and the cultural differences, and so that helped. But that's actually part of what excited me about Blue was taking some of the knowledge that the private equity firm had, and starting to build on that and learning. I mean, we made some mistakes and it took us longer to get where we wanted to go, but we learned a lot. And we also opened doors through relationships, sort of country by country. We were lucky enough to be in the Apple stores, and Apple put us in stores worldwide. Then we would, from those Apple stores, get into top tier distributors, because they saw us in the Apple store and said, okay, there's something about this product if Apple's carrying it. That built up an Amazon business, and then from there we were able to have enough of a weight in a particular country that we could go out and get other dealers and key distributors to get on board. So it came together fairly quickly, but not without its challenges along the way.
Yeah. So let's move away from Blue, although I have a million questions about your internationalization strategy. Let's talk about Bose, of course, now, right? Your current role. I think most of us are familiar with the consumer side of Bose, but you are CEO of Bose Professional. Can you tell us a little bit about the company, size-wise, product focus, and your role?
So as people may or may not know, Bose decided to sell off and close a few things during COVID, and one of them was Bose Professional. And so as of April 1 in 23, Bose Professional was acquired by the private equity firm Transom that I worked for at the time. And so we are now a fully independent business, and we'll use the Bose Professional name for some years to come, and then at some point we will make a transition. So we were one of those things where we're very small for Bose, less than 5% of their business likely, but still a substantial business for the pro audio space, meaning that we're in a given category like speakers, we're a top 5 to top 3 company and number 1 in some regions of the world against companies like JBL, QSC, Biamp, etc. So while we were a small fish in a big pond, we're now a big fish in a smaller pond. We're very global business, about 50 years so far, in 160 countries. We have about 300 employees. We're direct in about 25 of those countries. So we just, as part of the carve out from Bose, we just opened up about 10 experience center offices around the world. And we're about to, as I mentioned earlier, we're about to move from Bose's campus down the street to our own standalone headquarters with a full experience center and engineering labs, et cetera. So my role is really twofold over the last year and a half, partly a carve out. This was a very complicated carve out. So we just finished, we literally just transitioned our last country from Bose supporting us to it being our own entity and our own infrastructure. That happened a couple of weeks ago. So we are now fully done with the carve out, but that was a heavy lift. That was a lot of work by a lot of the team and third-party advisors to set up we inherited some great things, the R&D, sales, marketing, some of operations. But we had to build from scratch, finance, IT, the rest of operations, some of the other functions. So, and all the systems, the ERP system, everything had to be built from scratch. So that was a big part of the job, but also you have to run the business. So the other part was really establishing what should our vision and strategy be for the business, and do we have the right team to get there? And so I did end up making quite a few changes in the leadership team. I promoted some people from within and brought some folks in from the industry. And we've put together a group of about 10 people essentially running the business that are second to none, just an amazing team. And now we're executing behind the scenes on a product roadmap and a strategy using that team. So a lot going on for sure.
So you were literally building the plane while you were flying it.
Yes, 100%. We use that term a lot over here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your industry. It's of course very technology driven. Is it also very innovation driven? Is there a lot of creativity? And how do you inspire that among your team?
Yeah, it's definitely technology driven. And I do think there's a lot of creativity and innovation. At the same time, um, what we do is, for the most part, we do other things, but the core business is commercial audio. So we build anything that you see that has a Bose name on it that's permanently installed. So a ceiling speaker in a restaurant, or a hanging speakers in a theater, speakers in a church, and the power amps and the processing that goes behind that. Those are all Bose Professional products. And the industry, as much as it is technology based, and it moves fast from that standpoint, they also they want predictability, they want reliability. They're in and out of jobs all the time, and they don't want a lot of change, because then they have to retrain all their people. They want change when it's going to really make a difference to their business. And our core customer is an integrator, basically someone who's designing and putting in these systems. So, we're we're trying to challenge it a little bit, in that we want to say, forget about how it's always been done. Let's get creative. We've got a really interesting opportunity here, that we've got this 50-year reputation and legacy and global distribution, but we kind of get to start fresh here. We get to kind of build up the company almost from scratch, with that core business. And so we're trying to challenge kind of the day-to-day. And I can't go into detail, but I can say that my and some of the leadership team's experience in other parts of the pro audio business have brought some really interesting thinking into how systems for install and commercial are designed and implemented, that makes it more flexible, more scalable. We'll have a little bit of a task selling it to some of the old guard that wants to, keep things, unchanged. But I think we have some pretty interesting things to offer the market over the next couple of years.
I gotta ask, just because everybody talks about artificial intelligence these days, is that impacting or maybe even driving at least segments of your business in any way?
Yeah, I mean, there is the fad part of it, that, artificial intelligence on some level has been around for decades. So the fact that it's this new crazy thing, I get that generative AI is kind of new, but so I sort of bristle a little bit at the whole AI. We've got to hurry up and change the names of our products to AI, or we're not going to be hip and in the know. But from a practical standpoint, it absolutely offers us some opportunities. So we think there's some things we can do around having our systems be a little smarter, more sensors involved, so that there's an understanding of what's happening in the room, and adjusting, say, the volume of the music or the type of music. There's other things around issues that involve safety and security, and being able to turn systems on or off, or allow, so, for instance, a first responder to have access to a sound system via a mobile phone. There's some interesting things that are happening for sure. For anybody who says that, AI is going to absolutely transform our business tomorrow, that's not real. That's not going to happen. But it will have an impact, and I think it'll offer some pretty interesting opportunities for automation and in fitting solutions to specific needs of our customers.
I've already started to dip into some of the questions that are coming up in the Q&A section. There are a lot of questions about leadership and actually running a company like Bose Professional, but I want to get to one question here about your private equity experience versus corporate, right? So this is your second gig working for a private equity owned company. How would you see the major differences in your experiences in working for corporate versus private equity?
Yeah, so it's actually my third time under private equity, second company under private equity, because Blue is actually owned by two different private equity firms over the years. Um, it's interesting. With Guitar Center, it was a public company. With TC, it was a really owned company. Um, and my experience has been a really good one. I know private equity can sometimes get a bad rap, sometimes rightly so, sometimes not. But my experience with private equity has been in both companies' cases that I worked for, Riverside and Transom, that they they added value. They invested, they added value. We added jobs, we added innovation and products. We grew the business, and um, and so I think there's by necessity, because private equity investors, limited partners, want to understand what their money is doing, and they want to see results. So you do have a short term, just like a public company, you have a bit of a short term view of what have you done for me lately? And so I have to push sometimes for a longer term view, and some investment. But what I've found is if you're running the company well, and you're hitting your targets, that cures a lot of ills and allows for that freedom to get the investment you need to do the long-term stuff that's really going to add enterprise value for everyone down the road. And so I've had a really good experience. I've had other, I was not part of Guitar Center when Bain came in, and that's a situation that didn't go well for a long time, and for a lot of people. So I have seen some where just bad timing, bad fit, whatever it was. Um, but again, I've had a good run. I think the fight is the short-term thinking versus the long-term thinking, and just trying to find that balance.
Yeah. Perfect. So let's get to leadership a little bit. There are a number of questions. So one question would be, you definitely you progressed, right? From, oh, did we lose John right now?
Uh-oh.
We lost your video, but we still have your audio, so that's fine. So you had a progression, right? From being an employee to becoming a manager, more responsibilities to becoming a leader. So how do you manage that journey? How do you increase your leadership skills? And were there any particular experiences that you had that shaped you as a leader?
So, sorry, can you say the beginning of that again? I was trying to get my video to work.
Apologies. Yeah, so the first part of the question was, how do you develop leadership skills? And the second part was, were there any experiences that really shaped you as a leader?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, I think it's I have to sort of reflect on this, because I've gone through some phases where, as a kid in school, I for some reason really gravitated towards student council, and president of the student class, and those kinds of things, but also went through a period where I was not interested in that. So I think it's about feeling like you have something to say, feeling like you have something to offer. And so for me, I that excited me, and I wanted to be a part of that. And so from an early age, I was never really thought about it. I didn't write down that, I want to be X, Y, or Z. I just was interested in being a part of something and having a voice in something. And so I put my sort of put myself out there. So, I think that's part of it. And then I think, to your second part, once you put yourself out there, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to screw stuff up, and you got to just keep doing it. And I'll give you the best example I have is when I was at Alesis, and it's sort of embarrassing, but it's just, it's one of those things. You're young and stupid, and you think you know what you're doing. But the company was struggling a little bit already, and I was head of marketing communications, and I had a counterpart who was head of product marketing. And, things were not going well, and I needed to bring the team together and kind of have a tough meeting. And the meeting went a little bit off the rails, and I didn't react very well. I did sort of the opposite of my personality. I tried to, get fire and brimstone and tell people how it was going to be, and I sort of panicked, and luckily my partner saw that I was about ready to, like, lose it and not come up with the right words and say the wrong thing, and he kind of saved me, pushed me aside, and sort of took over. And I thought after that, two things came up for me. One is, you don't, just because you got the title doesn't mean you have the respect. You have to earn it. And I hadn't earned that team's respect or trust yet. And so I wasn't in a position to make demands from that group yet. And I tried to, and it didn't work. And I think the second part is, be yourself, be who you are. Don't try to be something you're not. And I was trying to be Mr. Fire and Brimstone, and I failed miserably at it. And I told myself after that, never again. I'm always going to do it my way, my style, my approach. And I'm not, the title is nothing to me. Like, I need to earn people's trust, earn their faith, and get them excited about what we're doing. And then if we have issues, we'll work through them. And that I'll never forget. That was a big moment for me. It was, again, embarrassing moment, but one that I learned a lot from.
And almost embarrassing, right? But we hear that a lot, that it's highly suspicious when leaders tell you, just trust me, right? Because trust is not given, trust has to be earned, as you've said.
Yeah.
Through actions and through modeling behavior. Was there any particular adversity in at some point in your career that you had to overcome, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly been several things. I think, one is a business where the founder got cancer. I was very young at the time. I was in my 20s, but was given more and more responsibility, and was very much struggling with it. And I started to worry about, my future, the business's future, how are we going to handle all this? I think through that process, I had some good mentors, and I learned that, panic helps no one. That essentially 99% of the time things work out. You're going to figure it out. So take a breath, be calm about it, and walk yourself through that, and get to that other side. So that was definitely an early challenge. I think the other one is the whole bankruptcy I mentioned earlier. I had a moment where I had some great relationships, and several people in the industry said, I'll hire you in a second. And so when I was laid off, I went home for the weekend, and I had a great weekend. I was in great shape, glad to be kind of away from the chaos of the bankruptcy, and was like, on Monday, I'm going to call these people and I'm going to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I called all three of these people who offered me jobs in the past, and none of them had anything. And so I went, oh, okay, what do I do now? And, again, you have this moment where you panic a little bit. And again, I knew inside that I was going to be fine, but that first week or two, it's a great learning experience, because you get very humble very fast, and you start realizing, you gotta work for this. You gotta put some effort out there, and make sure that you're taking care of yourself along the way.
So what I heard you say so far in the last 20, 35 minutes or so was, passion matters, put in the hard work that matters, but you just also said something else, mentorship. So we have a number of students on the call, on the webinar, and they have some questions concerning, how do I plan my career? So in a way, I think they are actually looking for some quick mentorship here during the webinar. And some people say, if I haven't it all figured out, I'm in college right now, I don't know where my life will take me. Is that a problem? Others say, I want to start in the music industry. Where do I start? How do I start? Do you have any thoughts on these questions?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the last one first. The music industry is interesting. Something that we've worked a lot on in the past few years is a lot of people don't realize that there is this sort of entire area of the business that is around the product. So a lot of people in the music industry either are going down the pro audio area of sound recording or live mixing, and being an engineer, or a musician who is writing songs and trying to get a record deal or get, YouTube viewership. But there's also really interesting jobs around the manufacturers that make the products. And so one of the things we did at Blue, we had a mentor or an intern program with Berklee School of Music and Full Sail Recording School and all these sort of audio schools. And it was great because some of them came and swept the floors and, did product support and eventually moved on to what they wanted to do, which was recording engineer. And that was great. It worked for us. It worked for them. But some of them stuck around and ended up becoming managers. We had one guy who ended up going back and getting his degree in electrical engineering, becoming an engineer in the engineering department for Blue. So there don't count that out, that there's some really interesting jobs to be had in marketing and technical support and engineering, et cetera, in the music industry. So that's something I think that we try to push. I'm a member of the Pro Audio Manufacturers Alliance, and that's something that we've pushed a lot in the past. On the mentor front, I have sort of both sides to that. I think it's hugely important and really, really beneficial. And the right conversation with the right mentor at the right time can be the thing that gets you to go to the next level. At the same time, what I wouldn't do is put too much weight on it that somehow somebody's going to be the ultimate mentor and they're going to solve all your issues. I had good and bad experiences, had some great mentors who are now great friends, but also went into a few jobs where I was like, I'm taking this job because I've heard about this person and I think he's going to be a great mentor and I can't wait. And it didn't turn out that they were a very good mentor. And I found out that my instincts and what I wanted to do were actually much more right for me than what the mentor wanted me to do. So you got to still believe in yourself and trust yourself and your own instincts, but use mentors for that support that you need. I had a situation. I was working for a sales rep firm, which what moved us to LA, and a big manufacturer put us on a 90-day probation. And I thought, okay, I just moved my wife out here. We're pregnant with our first child, and our number one brand just puts us on probation. What am I going to do? And I took the head of marketing for that company out to lunch just to ask him his advice. And it was such a great thing to do because he's like, look, you guys are going to get your hands slapped for a minute. You're going to be fine. Don't freak out about it. It's just a part of the package. It's what we have to do. But it was just a chance for me to get, someone to support me and someone to give me some input and some advice because I was new to that situation. So I think that is super important.
Yeah. So we have quite a few questions and only a minute or two left. So I'm trying to summarize them in a way. So one question deals about how do you manage leaving your employees with a fair degree of autonomy, with the larger vision that you have to have as a CEO for the company? How do you balance that out?
Yeah, love that question because that is where I live. I mean, my approach from a very early point in my career has been kind of threefold. First, you hire for talent, not for skills. You can train people's skills, but you need people who are passionate and talented in what you're hiring them for. You give a set of clear goals, or you agree and align on clear goals of where you want to go and where you want to end up. And third, you have a culture, a way of working, a way of values, of the way we want to treat each other. And if you get all three of those things right, essentially what I've done at Bose Pro is in each department, I went in and evaluated. And if the leader wasn't the right leader for us, I made a change. I ran it for some period of time on an interim basis while I brought somebody in ultimately that was better than me. I ran marketing for a minute, and then I brought someone in who's way better at marketing than me, and they now own that. And so, I firmly believe that you have to give autonomy. I am the opposite of a micromanager. Now, if you get that wrong, you got to pay attention. If you've got the wrong person, the wrong spot, you're not aligned on the goals, you got to fix that. And then you're going to have to work on that to get it right. But once it's right, you really can run fast and do amazing things. Now, I will say it only works from a leadership, once you get further and further down in the organization, it doesn't work as well. If you've got an entry level, someone straight out of college who's on an entry level job, you can't just wait around and hope they figure out how to do the job. There's some training has to happen, some very clear guidance. So I don't agree. I don't agree that that's the approach everywhere throughout an organization. But for me, that has worked amazingly. And I think that's part of why I've been able to build great teams is people are excited to come join the team because they know I'm going to let them run it their way. I'm going to let them do what they do best. And I'm not going to tell them that all 10 of you have to march in this way. Don't care how you guys march. It's about how we get to the end result and do it in a way that treats everybody with respect.
Beautiful. I think we wish we had more CEOs like you in the world. So I apologize in advance to all the members of the audience who posted a question and we didn't get to them. There were quite a few, but there are a number of questions that kind of close the loop for today, coming back to your love for music. So I'm sure you're never bored in your current role. And how do you reconcile that with your love of music? How do you make time? How does music still shape you today and shape your day-to-day?
Yeah. Well, it helps that my wife is also in music. That's how we met. She teaches voice and still performs and runs her own, music showcase and music charity. So she'll make some things happen that allow me to stay involved. But it's also being in the industry. So, for instance, I have been performing with a group of friends from Fender Guitars, and it's just nice to keep it in the industry. We know each other. We know, our instincts and how we play, so we don't have to spend a lot of time rehearsing. We can show up, play a little bit, and then go play a gig, and it's not a big deal. But what I found is, there was about 10 or 15 years in there where I didn't play hardly at all. And it makes sense. I had, young kids and work and travel and all that. But now that I'm playing a little more, I really see like the benefit of it. Talk about stress reliever and giving you perspective, and staying connected with people in the industry and your friends. There's nothing like it. So I actually see it as a big plus for the work. It sort of makes it all worth it, and it also lowers the stress a bit, believe it or not, even though it's stressful making sure you have the time to do it.
Right. Next time you have to bring your guitar. As my last question, and I have to ask, right? So you're a double alum of Cal Lutheran. Your most recent educational journey here was our executive MBA. You were quite accomplished at that time already. I think when you entered the executive MBA, you were CEO of Blue Microphone. How has a program like that helped a person like you?
It was great because I was able to interact with others and get their sense of how they would approach it, and just really get an understanding of how others think about it. It was what I liked about the executive MBA was it was a broad scope of people, but also ages. It was people in their late 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, and it just was a real like melting pot. So that was great. It also, allowed me to take real world situations that I was and bring them to the program and use the program as kind of a bit of a testing ground for ideas and for things we were doing and if they made sense. So, that's what I really loved about it, was the fact that I could do real world things at the same time, dig in and learn things that always interested me that I didn't have time, some of the legal stuff, negotiation class was really interesting to learn like what you're just naturally good at and what you realize, oh, you know what, I could be better at this. So yeah, it was a kind of a mix of learning things that I've always been curious about and bringing my real world issues and challenges into the program and starting to process them through the program.
That's a wonderful endorsement of any program of that kind for working professionals. Well, thank you, John. We are actually over time already. I think I could go on for another hour talking to you. It's always a pleasure. Hope to see you in person next time you're back in Southern California. And I wanted to thank all of our audience and also point our audience to a number of upcoming events that we have in store for you at the School of Management, some in person, some online. So next week on October 11, we have our annual Executive Talent Management Forum, which is going to focus on artificial intelligence. During homecoming weekend on October 19th, Saturday morning, we are doing a professional development activity for our alums, our management master classes. And then we have another webinar coming up on November 12th from our Masters in Information Technology. Thank you again, everybody, for sharing your time with us. Thank you again, John, and good luck on your latest journey with Bose Professional.
Great. Thank you, Gerhard.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
We thank you for participating in today's Forward Together webinar series, brought to you by the School of Management at California Lutheran University. The School of Management offers a broad range of programs and community services. Whether you're looking to upgrade your career, locate current economic data from our Center for Economic Research and Forecasting, or a place to start and grow your business at Hub 101, our community startup space, we invite you to visit us at clu.edu/SOM and join the community as we move forward together.